Welcome to Pixel Pizza,
Did she say pizza?
your ultimate source for chiptunes, video game talk, and pepperoni. Delivered to you from Los Angeles and into the digital cyberspace of the 2020s.
Pizza power!
That's right, one super giant pizza.
I want a large, thick crust with double cheese, ham, pepperoni. Hey, where's my pizza? Pizza time.
Welcome back to Pixel Pizza audience. I am very excited for today's episode. We are speaking with someone maybe a little unconventional for the show. You know, we usually speak to game developers, programmers, musicians, people who are in the gaming space. And today we have someone who is also, has made his mark on video game history, I would say. He is primarily, though, an animation. He's worked with every studio under the sun: Disney, Sony Pictures, Fox, Warner Brothers, Dreamworks, Illumination. The list goes on, but you might know him best as the man behind the Kingdom Hearts pilot animatic. And this is Seth Kearsley. How you doing, Seth?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So, when in your life did you first know you wanted to be in animation?
I always drew growing up. I was a sick kid, and I had, I still have cystic fibrosis. As a little kid, I spent a lot of time really sick. So I spent a lot of time in my dad's work truck with just like a sketch pad and, pencil to keep me occupied. So I kind of always drew, and of course I always was into cartoons, because what kid isn't into cartoons?
Sure.
But then it never kind of went away for me. I remember like when all of the other kids were getting to the age where it stopped being like cool or whatever to still be watching cartoons. I was still watching cartoons. I was still like running home from school to like catch Robotech, because it was like if you missed it, you missed it, and there was like an ongoing story to it, but I never really thought about animation as like something that you could do for a living. Like it just I never even thought about how stuff gets on the screen, so often people, that's like the first question people ask, like, so like, how do you make them move? And I guess I always thought that it must be like some sort of like puppet thing or something. I don't know. But I had a friend that went to Cal Arts, and so he introduced me to the school, and I saw all the drawings that everyone was doing like on the walls there or on their desks, or and I was like so blown away by all of that. And it felt like I had found my people or something. So I really wanted to get into the school, and I went out and talked to a counselor, and they said no. And they gave me a bunch of things to work on, and so I worked on a bunch of that stuff over the next year, and then reapplied and got in. So that was sort of the beginning of it. When I was going to Cal Arts, like I always thought like, well, I'll get in the animation school because my friend's in the animation school, and so if I can get in through the animation school, that's what I'll do. And then I'll transfer to live action because like Tim Burton was my favorite director at the time, and he had gone to Cal Arts. I just didn't realize that he went through the animation program also.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But then when I got into into the animation school and started to meet like all of the different people that were in the animation school, like it just like more and more and more, it was like I felt like I found my people. And yeah, it was weird at Cal Arts that like you know, you may have been in high school, you may have been like kind of like the oddball kid,
Right.
and then at art school suddenly like, you know, the guys that were in the, or you know, the people who were in the animation department were like the most like mainstream people, and then it was like, you know, the rest of the art school was I don't know, I don't know, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's definitely, as someone who went to art school too, well, it was writing school, but it's, you definitely feel like you found your people compared to high school or
Yeah, for sure.
any other time.
So yeah, that was kind of the you know, the entry point to animation. And you know, I knew so little about animation that you know, there were people that were in my class that were like starting with me that were talking about the Nine Old Men, and I kept hearing about the Nine Old Men so
All
much
right.
that I was like, are there like nine old guys that go to this school? Like, who are these nine old men that they keep? Well, you know, the nine old men always say, rah, rah. So that's how little I knew. You know, and there were people at the school that had like memorized the illusion of life, and I'm seeing it for the first time, you know, looking at their copy going, wow, yeah, this is great. Why didn't they put this? Well, I guess they did put this out. How come I never got this? How come I didn't know this was a thing? But yeah,
So I guess you didn't grow up in LA then?
I grew up in Ventura,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
but you know, Ventura is like a million miles away from LA.
Mm.
You know, it just feels like like you're on a completely different planet than LA. And you know, in high school, we'd come down to LA, and it was just like this trek to come to LA. You know, even though it's not actually that far, um, but um, but yeah, Ventura is its own little farm slash surf town.
Mm.
So
Were you much of
uh,
a surfer?
I never surfed. You know, I did a
Uh,
lot of like, you know, boogie boarding and you know, stuff like that. But yeah, we moved to Ventura from Ohio. You know, I was when I was like 9, and you know, so my dad didn't surf, and you know, we occasionally you meet people that surf, and it's always like, oh yeah, it seems so cool, I should surf. And I still think like, oh yeah, it's so cool, I should surf. And then now I'm being told like, well, you're in your 50s now, so maybe that time has passed. But maybe
Never
I'll
too late.
still I'll get a longboard. You know, I guess those are easier to get up on. Did you
Mm.
grow up in LA?
No, I'm from New York originally,
Mm,
which I mean did kind of expose me to like the history of animation stuff. There was a
yeah.
lot of great exhibits. There was one on Tim Burton.
Mm,
I was always very into Chuck Jones. I got to meet
uh-huh.
him at
Yeah.
one of the malls. That was like huge for me. But yeah, and then I just moved to Burbank a year and a half ago.
Oh wow. And so what are you doing out here?
I'm doing voiceover
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm doing, yeah, this podcast
Awesome.
editing stuff. So it's been really cool.
Yeah. It was weird for me to move to LA, and I think definitely like the valley side of LA was you know, more appealing for me coming from Ventura. Like it
Hmm.
felt more familiar, you know, versus like on the other side of the, you know, in the LA basin, or like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, it, yeah, it felt like another planet.
I never get out there.
Yeah, have you never gone?
No, I just not frequently.
Ah, yeah.
So one of the things that like super caught out to me about your background is when you directed your first feature film,
Yeah.
Eight Crazy Nights, you were in your 20s.
Yeah, I
That's
think it was
pretty crazy.
28 maybe when it started. Yeah, it is crazy.
So yeah, like what was the pressure like for you at that age?
um, so it's a little different for me because you know, I going from being sick kid in my dad's work truck to working for my dad and then by the time I was done with high school, I was running crews. And so the plan was I was going to be, a general contractor, and I was going to run construction crews. And I also, growing up, I did a lot of, I used to go to horsemanship camp, and you start off learning how to ride, and then you end up learning how to train, and
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and
My mom
and
was a big rider, so I
yeah,
got into that a little bit.
and then I was also really into the martial arts, and you start out learning how to do stuff, and then you end up teaching. And so in high school I was running crews and I was running classes, so um, to like run crews, it was just something that I was familiar with, like delegating and hiring the right people and then staying out of their way but making sure they're doing their job. Like so I started directing my first show when I was 23, and then I was doing my first primetime show when I was like 25, and then Eight Crazy Nights. So it was like boom, boom, boom. It wasn't like I just like appeared on the planet on Eight Crazy Nights. It was a gradual progression, and also even with Eight Crazy Nights, it started really small. Like our first offices were smaller than this. I converted my garage, and our first offices were smaller than this. We were just like a handful of people, like, and it was sort of like gradually grew and grew and grew. And so I think because of that gradual like increase of the crew, then it wasn't like coming on to first day of a film shoot where like all of a sudden there's hundreds of people there and you've got to like that would be a lot of crazy pressure.
Oh, yeah, for
So
sure.
so yeah, I just, because I was so young with each of those steps, I always just figured if I fell flat on my face that it was their fault for hiring such a young and experienced director. But I didn't fall on my face.
Oh,
And probably like, the martial arts background, gave me like kind of a like, you can do anything kind of mentality.
right. I did Taekwondo growing up, and I
Yeah.
remember the one thing my instructor would always say to me is indomitable spirit,
Yeah.
and that stuck with me
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, I mean, we were always taught, because the style I learned, it had some Taekwondo influences, and I mean, it was sort of like mixed martial arts before there was mixed martial arts. And our instructor, who was also my youth pastor, would say like, you are learning how to end a fight like that. Like, we're not learning how to like, dance around and like, I'm teaching you the last step. Like, first you end a fight by getting out of it, by not getting into it. That's the best self-defense. Don't get into a fight. But if you have to get into a fight, I'm teaching you how to end that fight as quickly as possible.
Ah,
And so he's always like, you need to like look at this like you're going to be as precise and powerful as possible, to end the confrontation or whatever. So yeah, it was like, and it was funny because like my brother had all these friends that would get in fights at parties and stuff, and they were always like, yeah dude, come on, like we're gonna go. And I'm like, yeah, you don't want to go. And they're like, yeah, but I'm gonna fight dirty. And I'm like, what? Fighting is dirty. Like, there's no clean fighting.
that's
um,
true.
and so yeah, they would occasionally try to test, and there's just nothing to compare someone who has not been trained to fight versus someone who has been trained to fight. Like, so yeah.
Oh, yeah, big difference. So, I mean, I guess sort of next on the list is, of course, the Kingdom Hearts pilot.
Yeah.
So, when you were first introduced to the game, what were like the things that stuck out to you?
I mean, right away when you start playing, it's been 20 years. So it's not like I kept playing it,
Sure.
every year after. But it kind of hooks you in like right from the very start of the game. And then you start to get sucked into the story. and then like the gameplay is really good, and like the fight moves that he's doing are like pretty good, and
Oh, yeah.
so it was kind of like all of those things, and also the combining of like the Disney style with anime style. Like I was really attracted to that because I've always been a huge fan of anime and a huge fan of Disney, and also I was looking for like the next thing, and so like I really thought Kingdom Hearts was going to be the next thing after Eight Crazy Nights, like, and so yeah, I play a lot of games, and at the time I was I had finished Grand Theft Auto 3, and I was like doing all of the bonus things, like, and then seeing like just what else can I do, like how many wanted stars can I get, and can I fire this rocket launcher from the top of the building, and like what's going to happen then. So with Kingdom Hearts, you know not just trying to finish the level, but trying to finish the level in like the coolest moves that you could do, like that was really what drew me to the game. But also like I had been having all kinds of meetings all over town, and everything that was like cool, you'd be like, yeah, that's cool, I want to do that, and then they'd say, well, we're out to Spielberg and Tim Burton, so we're trying to decide between those two. And it's like, then why are we meeting? Like,
Right.
if you're really out to both of those guys, then why are you meeting with me? And so Kingdom Hearts was just so cool, and it's like ticked all the boxes for me. And I thought, like, with my background with martial arts, like the fighting was going to be awesome, and then with my animation background, like, it was very much, when you go to CalArts, it's very much like a Disney school. So you're very much learning like how to draw that way. I think not so much anymore, but at the time it was totally like the breeding ground for filtering young artists into Disney. And so yeah, all of those things really attracted me to it.
So when you're making an animatic, I mean, so much of it is like, I had to do an animatic for my graduate school program, but so much of it is trying to communicate to people like immediately what something is. So
Yeah.
how do you do that in a visual sense?
Oh, I mean, I kind of approach the animation as like, if you boil it down to like the bare essence, you are just putting pictures in between pictures until you make something come to life. And so I try to like latch on to a part of the story or like a scene or something that really resonates, and then I'll like get that drawing out. And then find something else that resonates, and then eventually you start, it's kind of like putting the puzzle together. Eventually, like, you get all of the border, and then you start like finding these clumps. So like I kind of go about it like maybe a little bit more organically that way, especially for something like this. Yeah, telling the story visually. I don't know, I don't think about it. That's a hard question. It's deceptively hard question because it's what I'm doing all day, every day. So yeah, did that answer your question at all? Ask me another question.
I guess more
Head
my
me in the direction you want
question,
me to go.
my question is like, for stakeholders or people who want to understand the project,
Oh yeah.
like, in what sort of storytelling ways, maybe that's the better word than visual, storytelling ways do you like instantly show them in this like 5-10 minute thing what the project is about?
Well, okay, so it's presented as a pilot animatic, but really what that is a sales tool to try to first sell it to the executives. And they had a lot of requirements for it, like it had to feel like an episode 7. It couldn't be an origin story, but you've got to give a sense of the whole scope of the whole thing. And like the scope of Kingdom Hearts is pretty huge. So you've got to get across the concept of the Heartless and what they're doing, and that there's a I know it's not called they're not calling it the universe anymore. I've been schooled.
Oh, it's something different.
Something different now. But getting across that, like, each of these planets, which are like the features, that each of them are like a world within the Disney universe. Getting all that stuff across to them, that was tough. And the first draft of the script very much felt like an episode of Aladdin, and getting the script first to tell that story, I think, is the first hurdle. Because before there's any boarding done, they've got to approve the script. So I spent a lot of time working with the writer to, get the script where it actually felt like the game. And also, they would be concerned about, like, too much fighting, not enough comedy, sort of like balancing those things out. And making sure that you have like a button gag at the end of the scene, or something like that, or like within the fighting there's something fun and funny that happens. So if someone's not into the fighting, at least there's some funny stuff happening.
Right.
So there's a lot of juggling that needs to happen. And even like after the animatic was done, they still had Jiminy Cricket was added after, like, on the next to last pass, because they were just like, okay, we just really need it to be absolutely 100% clear to anyone watching this what's going on. And so it used to start just on Destiny Island, and so that whole like first part and the whole end part were added after, in the next to last round of notes. So adding Jiminy Cricket, and then adding the explanation of all the worlds, and then recapping at the end that Sora is looking for his friends Kairi and Riku, like saying their names again, like all of that was added after.
Yeah, it makes it clear to the marketers for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And what do you think are the most important points to nail when adapting a video game to animation?
I guess for me, it was more, I didn't want to just like do a one-to-one recreation of all the cutscenes. I was like, well, like, these are the moments that happen in the game, and then you've got all this gameplay. But there were like a bunch of other moments that I felt like were story beats that would happen within that game that just weren't on camera in the game. Like, like there's going to be a moment where Sora is in the ship, and he's sad about his friends. So let's show that moment.
That was my favorite moment for sure.
Yeah, I like that one. So I was trying to like connect some of the dots that weren't in the game. So because I just felt like if the fans of the game were to watch the show and it was just a one-to-one, then they're not going to watch the show because they've already seen that. They played the game. It's kind of like honoring the fans and letting them know that this show was made with them in mind, so that there would still be something new for them to experience with the show.
That's great. Yeah, I think a lot of us, certainly when we play games, we're wondering, what are the characters thinking and feeling in these moments that we're not seeing?
Yeah.
And something else that I thought was interesting when I was looking to your background is that you've also done the inverse. That when you were working with Illumination, you worked with EA to adapt The Secret Life of Pets into a game.
Yeah.
So what was that like on the other end?
Definitely a lot of like learning about games and specifically like a match 3 game. And and you know, we were doing in that game, it was a match 3 game, and as you did certain matches, it would open up some special animation at the top of the screen. And so like that was my main role in that. Sorry, emails. That was my main role in that. Coming up with what the first of all, like what each of the locations would be, and then what they would do in the locations, and stuff like that, and how the what happened at the top of the screen would relate to something that was done within the game. Like if you got, you know, if you made this certain match, then it would unlock this bonus thing that would then like put some food in their bowl or something like that. So yeah, it was a little different. I remember the very beginning of that, like we had an ideation session, which I think is like something that happens in games that doesn't happen in animation, where they wanted to like get up in front of the whiteboard and do like a whole like word association, to try to figure out like, you know, I don't know, it was like a weird exercise of like, you know, group creativity. Which, you know, that doesn't really happen as much that way when you get a bunch of people that haven't ever like worked together. You can't just like, you know, be like, all right, everyone be creative now together with these strangers that you don't know.
Right.
So
I can imagine that would be a lot.
yeah, that part of it was weird, but yeah, it was fun to like, you know, continue to like create story for the game. But yeah, that was my role on that.
Awesome. And I mean, since you play games a lot, or used to, or I don't
I
know.
still do.
Good, cool.
I'm very much obsessed with League of Legends,
Oh,
and yeah, I play it way too much.
I guess then I should ask, how do you like Arcane?
See, I thought the Arcane was like the best example of what we were trying to do with Kingdom Hearts because, you know, if you're watching Arcane, and you know the game really well and you know all of the champs really well, then it's kind of like there's a bunch of Easter eggs for you, when you're watching the show. You're like, oh my God, like, do you know the game at all?
I'm not super familiar.
Okay. Well, um, as you're watching the show, you're like, oh wait, that's Singed, and oh my God, is that Twitch? That's where he. This is where he makes Twitch, you know, or you know, just knowing like, oh wait, Echo, yeah, oh my God, that's how Echo got that thing. But if you don't know the game and you're watching it, you're not thinking any of those things, but you're still sucked into the game or
Oh
sucked
yeah.
into the show. And you know, in the game, like I have all of the like vocalizations turned off, because they can be distracting sometimes. But you know, in the game, like Jinx says, "You think I'm crazy? You wait till you meet my sister." But like there was never any reference of who her sister was. So then to like meet the oh my God, Vi is Jinx's sister. So all of that stuff was cool. And then, you know, from an animation perspective, you know, they just raised the bar so high.
Oh yeah.
And I hope that second season is just as good. I hope that it doesn't like all of a sudden get bad in the second season, because now they've got to be on a tighter schedule because they've got to get a second season out. But yeah, I don't think I think that they made such a huge impact on animation as an industry, or that you're going to start to see the ripple effect of that look all over animation.
That's so great to hear. And I think Netflix has just in general been really killing it with the game to animation adaptations. Castlevania is probably my favorite show right now. The
Yeah,
Cuphead one's been really good.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's been exciting.
yeah. I think that, what sets Arcane apart from all of those though is that Riot put up the money for the show.
Oh,
They didn't go to the streamers and pitch it. They just made it.
wow.
And they're like, we're gonna make it how we want it to be, and then after it's done, we'll either go to streamers or we'll release it on our own on our site or something like that. But that the like the guts of a company to stand by their own product that way, and to make it how they know that it needs to be, I think is really why that show is so good.
Yeah, it shows so much passion.
Yeah. And yeah, not having to ask permission to do the things that it needs to be. And like there are some great execs in that are on the side at Netflix that have like great feedback and stuff. But there are also execs at every major studio that just really don't know what they're talking about and really shouldn't be in those jobs. They really shouldn't be having such a creative influence over the work that's being done. Because, when you have a good exec, it's so nice to have someone who like, they get it, they're there with you, you're all making the show together, and they're adding things that you're like, oh my God, how did we not ever think of that? Thank you. And then you have other execs that are like, I mean, what are they doing really? And it's just like, oh my God, seriously? Are you going to make me like delve into the psychology of the characters in this moment? Like, they're trying to survive. Like, what do you mean? What are they doing? So occasionally you get execs that are like that. You're just like, how did you get this job? How did you get this job?
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
If there was like one game series that is yet to be adapted that you could like take the reins on and make into an animated series, what would it be?
The games that I play now, it's not the same kind of thing. Like I play a lot of Minecraft with my girls. I play a lot of League of Legends. So I'd have to go back to when I was just playing a lot of games, and it couldn't be like a Call of Duty or like that kind of a thing. I mean, those would be cool to make, but I just feel like they wouldn't get made. They would be made in live action. Those games. Sure. There was one that I actually pitched at Sony, Sly Cooper.
That would be so good.
Yeah, I thought that would be really cool. And then Jackson Daxter, I thought, that would be really cool. I don't know, have they made that one into something?
They haven't, but that one is interesting because the tone of the series got so different over time.
Yeah.
It started as more of like an adventure, colorful kind of game, but then it got like grittier and cyberpunk, and he had guns and a goatee, and
well, so I guess like Kingdom Hearts, I played the first game. So I didn't get to the gritty parts. I had I used to have my nieces and nephews would come over, and I only had M games, and so then they come over and I was like, I mean, what like, so they're playing Enter the Matrix, like what is the harm? And then I went to turn the game off, and I think my nephew was like 12 at the time, or maybe he was like 10, and he literally was like bawling uncontrollably, like I just took the drugs away. And I was like, oh my God, that's why there's a rating on the games. That's why you don't give them the M game. That's why you give them the E game. So then I started having those kinds of games, and then it was always like, Uncle Seth, can you get us through this part? And I was the uncle that would come in and be like, there. Oh my God, how did you do that?
I was that cousin for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, the kids are like, oh, you're not worthy. Yeah.
So, uh, if somebody else today was like given the opportunity to create a Kingdom Hearts show, what advice would you give them?
Um, I mean, I guess to like stay true enough to the game that that the fans you with anything like that, you have to pay respect to the fans and make sure that you're not doing something that's just going to just straight up piss them off. You know, giving respect to the fans, and then giving the fans, you know, something new, like bring something new to the table. You know, don't do it exactly how it was before. And Yeah, I mean, you know, an animated series is a different animal from a video game. Um,
Oh yeah.
so, you know, you've got these little chunks of time that need to have a structure to them. You know, the same way, you know, a game needs a structure, and, you know, you've got your game engine, you need an engine for the story, for the show. And, you know, how does the plot play out from, you know, episode to episode? Um, so yeah, I guess keeping all of that in mind.
For sure. And now that I'm remembering it, I did watch this. It was an anime adaptation of Persona, and
Uh-huh.
which is like a big RPG series.
Hmm.
And they did it pretty much, it was just like exactly the game. And the
Yeah,
animation was beautiful, the voice acting was really good, but everything, it was just an exact copy of the
yeah,
game.
you
It
knew
got
what
so
was going to
boring to
happen.
watch. Yeah.
Yeah. With the Kingdom Hearts pilot, it was fun to watch. I watched a lot of the reaction videos.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and when people saw something that wasn't like how it was in the game, um, their whole like persona changed. Because then, like, they thought they knew how it was going to play out. They're like,
Right.
oh, okay, so then this happens. Okay, and then that happens. Okay, and then that happens. And then when Sora wakes up on the ship and he looks at that card, they're all like, oh.
Gasped.
And so to like twist it a little bit like that, like you think you know but you don't know. You know, um with the game, there's, like you said, like all of that gameplay, like what's going on in the character's head, like there's no story that's happening. It's just like, you know, it's he's got to beat this many guys to get to the next thing, to get to the level boss and beat that. But there's no internal conflict. There's no, like, I know that now there's like a whole huge overarching, like, interconnected web of story with Kingdom Hearts.
Right.
But you know, when you're playing the game, so much of it is you just playing the game.
For sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
filling
I
in those
think it's like
blanks.
the perfect time to bring it back, because or bring back the idea, because yeah, the having it as a show would make it so much more digestible for people, I think,
Yeah,
getting everything that's going on in
yeah.
the story.
Well, and you know, I think that if you were playing out the series, that you know, especially with it being such a big game, I know that there are shows that I'm helping out on a show right now that is a huge brand, big enough that it's not there. They weren't picked up for one season; they were picked up for 3 seasons. And I think that that's what you would need to do with Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
don't pick it up for one season and be like, I don't know, we'll see how it does, because like it's doing good.
Yeah.
You know, just go in and commit to 3 seasons, so that you could at least over those 3 seasons plan when these big story moments happen. You know, and I don't know this how the story plays out in all of the rest of the games. I've heard that it kind of goes all over the place.
It does.
Yeah, so you know, I think that if I were telling that story, I think I might tell it in a more linear way,
Hmm.
and you know, sort of like grab that part and grab that part and grab that part, and, like, you know, keep like a more focused story. So
Yeah, that.
which will piss some people off, and some people will be like, thank you so much for making
Yeah,
it
I
simple.
think it would be helpful for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those were all the questions I had in mind. I know you're a busy guy. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do have to ask, this is the Pixel Pizza podcast. Where is your favorite pizza place?
Oh, that is harder than how would I adapt to the game? I mean, there's a place that's right by me that they used to have like the best pizza, and they still do have really good pizza. It's called Pagliacci's.
Oh,
I would take people there when it was like one part was pizzas, just pizzas, and then the other part was like a yogurt place where they do like smoothies and stuff. And then recently recently for me, I've lived here for a bit. But they converted it to just a whole restaurant, and so they have pizza, but then they have like it's like a regular like nice Italian restaurant, and it's great that it's like just right there. So Pagliacci's would be on the list. There's this Ove, which I think used to be like Big Mamas and Papas. Like they do a good like just flat pizza with like it's like the sauce and the stuff that you want, and it's just like a good like classic like large pizza, and then there's another one. My wife does like all the ordering of the pizza and stuff, but I think might be Goop. There's a like Goop, the Gwyneth Paltrow.
yes.
But they have a gluten-free crust, and so my wife wants the gluten-free crust. And it's the first time that I've had a gluten-free pizza where I was just like, oh my God, that crust is actually nice. So yeah, so that was good. It might not be Goop, but
Yeah, I didn't know they did food.
yeah, she's ordered Goop stuff a couple of times. But yeah, that's I'll be like, hey, yeah, can we get the one with the gluten-free crust? Then that's as far as my knowledge of it goes. I like the pizza where my wife orders it from. That's my favorite pizza.
All right, well, definitely look into those two you mentioned, the locations. But great. So yeah, this marks another great Pixel Pizza podcast. Thanks again, Seth. Where can people keep track of what you do?
I mean, mostly Twitter. So yeah, it's just Seth Kearsley on Twitter. And I'm on Twitter way too much. And I'm adding new things to YouTube all the time now. So yeah, that's kind of the main spots.
Great. All right. Well, signing off, I think we'll end with one track from our artist of the week. I play a different video game themed music artist every week here on the show, and this week is Blitz Lunar and his track Moon Milkshake. See you next week, listeners.